Our business is inherently based on trust. And trust is as much about a contract between you and your employee as it is between you and your customer. We chose W-2 employment from day one. In the industry, we've always said renters want more. Renters want more amenities, more points, more loyalty. And I would actually say that renters want less, right? They actually want less friction. They want less noise. They want fewer hoops to jump through, fewer apps. We're entering and have the opportunity to create Property Management 3.0. And in 3.0, it's the addition of the right tools and workflows with scale to serve both the professional institutional client and the mid-market or smaller client. I'm really bullish on AI. AI is a tool and a partner like any other. I don't think that there will be a management platform that is only AI. Until the robots come and they can fix all the toilets and actually greet you and make eye contact with you in a way that feels amazing, we humans and technology will coexist and should coexist in homes.
Welcome back to Season 4 of Multifamily Unpacked. Today's guest is Jessica Beck, CEO of Alfred, and one of the rare leaders who sits at the intersection of technology and operations. Jess's career started in consumer tech, but her path led her to multifamily, where she's now running both a technology platform and a large property management company. This conversation covers why she believes the future isn't AI replacing people, but AI empowering people. We'll unpack how Alfred's journey from service app to property management operator reveals the power of blending empathy and technology to create a better renter and employee experience. Roll the tape. Welcome to Multifamily Unpacked, and today's guest is a great friend, and as we were just joking, first time we've ever had a PMC and vendor CEO, so you're going to wear both the technology hat, literally the Alfred hat, as well as the PMC hat. But welcome to the show, Jess. Really appreciate you being here.
Tyler, it's a pleasure. I'm really looking forward to it, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
Jess, I have been a big fan of yours for many years, and I remember hearing about Hello Alfred is how I first heard of it when I was at Nestio, so some names that people may not recognize as well anymore. But maybe take us back in time to kind of how you came into the world of multifamily. And we're asking particularly because we really try to have this podcast be a place for both seasoned multifamily executives, but we also get a lot of listeners that are earlier in their career. So I'm curious if you could share kind of your point of view and how you came into the industry.
So we didn't intend to be in real estate at all. That's the headline. When we started Alfred, our goal was really to make the household run itself. So we started as a consumer tech platform in the era of Uber for everything. And our goal was to aggregate everything in one place and basically set up a system where you, if you lived in a home and you could have been an owner or a renter, could put your home on autopilot, and all the services that you need from food to dog to home cleaning would happen on a routine and you wouldn't have to think about it. So set it and forget it. We actually built that business for 2 years direct to consumer. And at year 2, we were approached by some large REITs and owner operators. And they said to us, we have all these renters. They are millennials. They seem very into technology and experience. We have beautiful buildings, but we don't have that. And this is pre-resident app. This is pre any rental portal. Can we buy your consumer tech and service and offer it to our renters as an amenity to add a brand feel to our properties? We said yes. And that's how we ended up in real estate. And from there, we started looking at what the actual rental experience was and what the resident experience was. And we realized that the past the front door portion, which is what we had owned originally, was really the end of the journey. And so much happened before you got to the property or when you were living in the property, but not even in your apartment, that impacted resident experience. And we started building backwards. And we started building an operating platform for the entire rental journey for residents. And the insight we had from that is you actually can't build a resident journey if you don't build an operator journey also. So almost by accident, we ended up building a operating platform centered on resident experience, but for what it means to live and operate a multifamily property.
That's an amazing story. And I think just it's very inspiring to me there's a bunch of things I'm going to unpack in terms of the day-to-day today and how you're running a technology platform that's also an operating platform, which I think for some folks is a novel thing, but to me, it just makes all the sense in the world. They are one and the same. But what I'm really impressed by, Jess, is to your point, you're an entrepreneur, right? And so you came into a B2C business trying to solve for a pain point. You found a industry that was in need of the services, was in need of a differentiated experience. And here, just to fast forward a little bit, looking ahead, you're running a top 50 management company a decade later. I think one thing that I often hear from folks is, I'm not a subject matter expert. I look at that experience and say within the space of 10 years, you weren't planning to be in real estate at all, let alone multifamily. And now for those who follow along, just merged two of the larger multifamily brands in the country together. If I could tie that back to early in your career, I'm curious if you always had that sense of almost adventure, or it's a combination of humility and courage to say, I'm going to go into an industry I know nothing about and actually be willing to grow within that. Because a lot of folks that we have on the show started as an assistant community manager, worked their way up to a regional, right? And they are like dyed-in-the-wool multifamily operators. You're the first multifamily operator that started as a tech entrepreneur. So I'm curious, is that something you knew early in your career that, hey, I'm willing to go and become an expert in things that I know nothing about?
So I think people might call it, you're very kind in calling it humble and courageous. My mother would tell you that I'm just crazy and probably took strange career paths. But in all seriousness, I grew up in an environment that encouraged being curious and building systems that didn't exist. So I actually don't know if you know this, but my younger brother, David, was born with Down syndrome. And part of what that means is, as a family, we had to look at all the things that people consider normal household systems and reimagine them for him, right? Like, it made sense to go to elementary school, but by the time he got to middle school, high school, and even post that, there were really no normal path systems for him. From the core, I really grew up thinking about, how do we bend the norms or expand the norms? How do we build systems of help into infrastructure and into homes? And that's inherently risky. That inherently says, let me go learn something I know nothing about, because at the end of the day, I have to. It's about the people I love and the communities I'm part of. And that's always going to be more important than not knowing something. And over time, I think you build the confidence through a lot of failure and challenge to bet on yourself and have conviction about stuff and know that, you have to give it a go. And if it fails, you'll give it a go again until you figure it out.
Oh, I love that, Jess. That I did not know that about your brother, but it does explain. I've always just viewed you as somebody with a tremendous amount of empathy and high EQ. And I think that those who have had to be open-minded and serve and love others that are different, you get that and you learn that. And I think in particular, like you mentioned, the ability to look at a situation and have to unpack it. You also mentioned there that you're accustomed to failure. And I can certainly share that feeling as an entrepreneur. There's a lot of days you just think, oh, we're doing everything wrong. I'm curious, as you look back early in your career, and if you were to give advice to others, that lesson of resilience. And interestingly, just something I think a lot about, because I think as an entrepreneur, and if you look at your career journey, certainly I'm sure it's taken different turns than you anticipated, right? Or than your mother anticipated. But then there's this kind of balancing act of, you have to be willing to be nimble, and sometimes you have to be stubborn and resilient, right? Of, no, we actually do believe in this, even though it's not popular. So I'm just curious, if you were giving advice to somebody else, how would you think about that? Hey, you failed, but you're going to keep at it, be resilient, bring grit to the table, versus, no, you need to learn a lesson and pivot quickly.
It's such a good question, Tyler. And I know I'm talking to a fellow entrepreneur, because you asked that in a very subtle and nuanced way. And it shows in your own experience, which is really impressive. I think one of the things that I had to learn on the journey is that both things have to be true. You have to be able to hold two things that are in tension in the same space. So on one hand, when you're running a company, you need to know, particularly when you're venture-backed, what's your burn? When are you going to go out of business? And you have to be really sober about that reality and not lie to yourself about the truth. And on the other hand, you have to be able to imagine and dream big. And you have to do both at the same time, because if you only dream big, you'll probably actually go out of business. And if you only focus on the hard, cold truth of things, you'll never actually build anything inspiring. And many people will run away or err towards one of those or the other. The actual thing to learn and the hard thing to do, but the very important thing to do, is hold both truths at the same time. Hold resilience and grit, and also hold the grace to be nimble, fail, and move on, right?
Yeah.
Both have to be true. And once once one comes to that understanding, a lot of things unlock.
I love that. That is so true. Yeah, and you're right. It is something I think a lot about. I think I've probably, at least in 3 all hands I can think of, had that exact message of, guys, there's some hard truths and some great things going on. We need to understand both. So let's continue in this kind of looking in the rearview mirror for a second, Jess. You mentioned earlier when Alfred came into the market and really made the move from kind of a B2C play, similar to the Nestio. Originally, Nestio was just urban apartment. For those few people know Nestio, even fewer know it used to be called Urban Apartment. So Karen, the founder, and Mike O'Toole, the CTO, originally were B2C. They made the B2B transition. They like to say that they were trying to build a Pinterest for multifamily, of finding apartments, pinning them to yourself. And that is the underpinnings of what we do today. I think similarly, as I understand your origin story, you said that there was, at this time, everybody was trying to be the Uber of name your vertical, right? Or the Airbnb of the kind of asset light, services heavy. I'm curious the approach you decided to take then. So you guys fell into real estate, fell into multifamily. Your customers, the REITs, brought you in there. But you made a very intentional decision, as I recall, to not follow the pure gig worker approach. And I actually recall this very vividly because one of the things I check a lot, like weirdly, is I always go on LinkedIn and I look at like the number of employees companies have, right? In my journey of up and down growth. And it was something that stood out to me very early that you guys were people forward, right? That like from day one, it was a services industry, but these were Alfred people. So I'm curious about that decision, zigging when the industry was zagging, and any lessons you learned from that.
This was a really interesting set of discussions, particularly in our boardroom early on.
Yeah.
So in our original model, you may remember this, we had the tech layer and we had the app, and we learned that we actually also had to have people in the field on site coordinating and managing the apartment experience. It would be today like an area manager or a regional in some way. But we've always had technology, we've always had people. And the trend at the time, to your point, was everyone should just be 1099. Like, why have any people on your balance sheet? This is crazy. It'll impact your margins and your ability to scale. We took a really different point of view. We actually thought it was the opposite. Our business is inherently based on trust. And trust is as much about a contract between you and your employee as it is between you and your customer. We chose W-2 employment from day one. I don't think I've ever actually had a contractor in a role like that. And part of it was because we couldn't deliver consistent service or high quality or train anyone or actually learn what tools they needed if we didn't have that type of relationship with our team member and our employee. I think more fundamentally, we've always bet on people, right? We're a tech company and we build technology, but we build technology for people. And we really valued that. So part of our investment in our team and our people and setting up a foundation of trust, which is core to what we do today as well, was to have a true employment relationship and have career paths and invest and build tools for our team so that they could take care of their residents and their owners and have the butterfly effect and pass it forward.
I love that. And that goes to the previous question that I asked. And I think if there's any folks earlier in their career or certainly entrepreneurs listening to this, it is something that you have to be able to do. You have to be able to be nimble and pivot. And you also have to be willing to be unpopular in your opinions. And I couldn't agree more. When you mentioned the boardroom dynamic, I can just imagine. I've been in those board meetings where is there a possible way for you to scrape a little bit more margin off of this? And that's an unpopular opinion to say, no, we're going to be human-centric. We think that's our differentiator as a tech company. And I would say today that continues to be something that a lot of folks are zigging on, right? They're saying no. And I actually really love, Jess, what you just said of we build software for humans. This isn't to throw shade at any one company. There's a lot of companies trying to solve for this, but I famously heard an entrepreneur say, we don't build software for humans. And look, that's a bet, right? Like you and I said, you make your bets. I think Funnel is aligned with Alfred in that we believe there's going to be humans in the real estate and leasing experience for time and all eternity. I'm curious if there's other, bringing it forward to today, because I think if you look at the success that your business has had, I think you've made the right bets, and I think you're extremely well positioned for differentiation in the market. But as you think about today's market, what are some of the perhaps misnomers or myths that people believe about the service, the multifamily industry and the services related to that, that you guys don't believe? You think differently about, be that about the agent experience or the renter experience itself?
It's a really good question. I'll start with the renter experience and then I'll add to it. I think that for a long time in the industry, we've always said renters want more. Renters want more amenities, more points, more loyalty. And I would actually say that renters want less, right? They actually want less friction. They want less noise. They want fewer hoops to jump through, fewer apps. So I think if we take that approach, that our attempt to impress residents almost outweighs the important stuff, which is if you give me more loyalty points, that's great. And by the way, I believe in loyalty points. But if my toilet is clogged and it does not get fixed for 5 days, I'm actually going to have a much different point of view and be more likely to churn out. So I'm a very big believer that if we do our job well, a lot of what we do should be invisible. I don't think this is about adding more. I think it's about making things more seamless, taking away friction and creating a easier experience. And that often is about less. We do this thing at Alfred where we say, what is the one thing? You only get one. What's the most important thing? And that's true. Like everyone in a startup has 5,000 things and they love to tell everyone about their 5,000 things. And I'm like, no, we want less. So I think that's true in our industry. I don't think people or renters want more. I think they want less. And that will allow the things that are really important to their experience to stand out. And it's that balance that I think we haven't gotten right yet.
Yeah.
On the operating side, I think that there's a lot of buzz right now. First it was centralization, now it's AI for all the things. And what I think is interesting is it's missing the arc of what's happened in management. I'm no expert in this, as I did not come from this industry, but if you look at the history of property management, a lot of it really starts as a mom and pop business serving buildings that are owned. So you have a lot of smaller owner operators that needed a management company to run their rental properties. And that's been the majority of what we would consider multifamily and property management. When the sort of Greystar Lincoln era begins, the innovation, so if that was like property management 1.0, we enter property management 2.0, which is really the professional manager, right? So you have the growth of the professional manager serving institutional customers, not just serving sort of themselves. And the innovation there is professionalization and scale. And I think that's where the beginning conversation around centralization happens, because they're like, we have enough scale where we should centralize. I think in order to do all of that, the tools have to be different and the actual workflows have to be different and the way that we operate has to be different. So I think we're entering and have the opportunity to create property management 3.0. And in 3.0, it's the addition of the right tools and workflows with scale to serve both the professional institutional client and the mid-market or smaller client. That's the era that we're in, and I think having a clear understanding of why we've gotten to where we are and all the success that has happened to date, but also what has to change in how the industry works and how we operate will help all of us build that future.
Yeah, I love that. And I think going back to your point on kind of the prioritization, I have to laugh because I'm actively like working on my H2. We have 5,000 things, but what are the 5 that matter? I get that. And I think it's a great discipline. And I think applying that to the management side, there's a lot of noise, like you said, right? And it's easy to just say, we're going to do centralization, AI, whatever it is, push that easy button. But I think a lot of operators have not taken the scope that you're describing of. There's a much bigger opportunity here that's going to radically change the way the industry operates. And again, you're not calling it community, I will. You have more firsthand experience in this than all but maybe 10 people in the world. I'd like to unpack a little bit of both the decisions and the learnings for Alfred to go into property management. Because to your point, As a venture-backed startup, the name of the game is not less services, more subscription revenue, and it's less people and higher margins. And you guys made an intentional decision, one that, again, I personally think is very smart and is one that we think and talk a lot about, of what elements of service this funnel need to offer even. But it was surprising. Like, I thought it was a brilliant move, but it was surprising when you guys acquired RKW first. And now you have RKW, and most recently announced Quarterra is also coming on board. So maybe go back for me just a little bit of why. And is it maybe just as simple as, look, like I said, we were always a people first, services first orientation. And then secondarily, just kind of curious the learnings as you've taken those original kind of first principles and applied them now to tremendous scale, right? Because you just mentioned some large operators. Your name is now on that list. You guys are now got to be like in the top 30 of management companies. So I'm curious, how that point of view has evolved as you went from technologist. I can sit here and tell them how to do it, but you took on the actual role, put on the actual hat of, no, we're going to run these properties.
With a lot of heartache, Tyler. So no, in all seriousness, we knew in 2019 that we were going to do this. We didn't do it till 2022. And I'll tell you the journey in between. One of the insights that we had when we were selling technology and some services into the industry is that the technology wasn't going to solve the problem. It was only as good as it would be used or implemented, and it would only generate as much savings for an owner or as much benefit for a resident as the management company was willing to change. And the truth is, management companies are really busy. There's 50,000 things going on. The support is often not available. The work is so noble and so important and so undervalued. And of course, there was no, how can you ask people that are over working thousands of hours to do more? You really can't. Not because they don't want to, but just because there's so many other things going on. So we started to see the difference between groups that would implement the full technology and groups that wanted to, but for whatever reason just couldn't get there. And we saw how much was left on the table. So we knew in 2019 that to really get the most value for technology and to really impact the resident experience, it was a combination of using the tools, but also changing how buildings run and the touch points with residents and the compensation structure in a good way for incentives for an on-site team and the actual roles on-site. We couldn't do that as a third party selling in. So we thought that we would need to have the ability to influence that as early as 2019. The analogy we used at the time is, imagine you were selling into Apple, but you never actually got to train the sales associates or the guys at the Genius Bar. So someone else ran the Genius Bar, but you provided the product. It didn't really work.
Right.
When we got to COVID, and this is for earlier entrepreneurs, one of our core products, which was the home manager product, the original people product, no longer worked because it required going into people's homes and it was a global health pandemic. So we went through the painful process of deprecating our first product and we shut it down entirely. And then we had a hole because we've always been people plus technology. We had this point of view that we wanted the opportunity to influence the management. And we decided at that time that we were going to start a management company. So I don't think you knew this either. We actually thought about starting a management company from scratch.
Wow. No, I did not.
That would have been very hard. I have a lot of respect and admiration for anyone who's done it. And I know quite a few who have, and it's an amazing amount of work and extremely impressive. We didn't take that approach. We, as you said, bought RKW. And that was really our test ground to see, could we begin to innovate the operating model of a property? And we basically said, here's three things that we want to measure. We want to measure NPS of a resident. We want to measure the NOI of a property, and we want to measure the actual business we're running and see if we can improve it. And we knew we would need to track it for a long time. So we set up buildings and all sorts of tracking things. And for 24 months, we tweaked and ran and watched. And we saw the trends go in the direction that we had hoped. Not without heartache, not without work. A lot of things didn't work, a lot of missteps along the way, a lot of learnings, but it worked enough. And that gave us enough conviction and signal to say, this is the answer. And let's go grow this thing and let's add some more to it.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I do recall in 2019 that you guys were already experimenting in ways with these concepts. And it's been really cool to watch that evolution, to your point, and now seeing it expand with the size and scale that you have. I do want to just double click on one thing quickly again to perhaps ask this question in a different way. Wearing the two hats, we've been joking about it, and you were gracious enough to actually literally put your Alfred hat on, so I didn't look like the only tech vendor in the room who couldn't dress up for a meeting. But the things would seem at odds, right? That in the industry as a venture-backed software company, we measure down to every dollar that goes into COGS, right? And in particular, the people and the services. And then in the third-party side, I came into this industry because my dad was an asset manager, and he, to your point, wants an institutional manager, right? So he goes out and finds the management company in the given market and says, "Okay, handle these assets." And that he's hiring people, right? Like they're saying, "Hey, we want the people to do this." I think that's one of the ironies, by the way, of these folks that are saying that it's all going to be replaced by AI. Is I don't think asset managers are going to be comfortable hiring. Like, they want someone to yell at when it's underperforming. Those two things are at odds on a spreadsheet. I don't know how it works of, hey, we're trying to build a software company, and on the other, we're trying to build a services company. Are they at odds in your world? Has that been a journey to get your board, your partners, to really understand how you can succeed on both fronts?
I think the fact that they look like they're at odds is helpful because when you look at the math, you would expect it to be different. But it also tells you that there's a potential for an opportunity. Yes. So when we look at it, we actually say, this is one business. And there are a lot of things that happen in a services business that are not amazing work, right? The number of PDFs that are downloaded, the number of emails that are sent back and forth. I promise you, if we could take that away from our team, they would be thrilled. So I think that the marriage of technology and service makes service businesses start to look more like tech companies from a margin and Excel spreadsheet perspective. And it makes tech companies start to look more like service businesses from a customer retention, LTV perspective. So if you think about it a little differently, you start to get the best of both models running in one company. Technology does what technology should do. People do what people should do. And you get high retention, high hospitality, high customer satisfaction. And you also get higher margins and more efficiency and differentiated product. So when we actually thought about what each of the models could offer, the blended one became very exciting.
Yeah, I really like that. And it's interesting because as we've evolved as a technology company, we've not taken as bold of a step yet, but I think that we've done several things to bring that know-how and experience into our business. We've hired a lot of former operators. And you're right that any given technology product at its core is only enabling the human workflows. And so the vertically integrated concept makes total sense to me. You alluded to, obviously, wherever we can automate away, that is a huge win for all stakeholders, right? Renters, like you said, often want less. And that may be, I don't want to fill out a form. I just want to be able to communicate succinctly or self-serve in a beautiful app like Alfred, which I always check. You guys have great reviews on the App Store. Everyone should check. It's really impressive how you guys have maintained such a quality product. But the layer of AI, so you and I have alluded to, and actually it's interesting, you've been at this slightly longer than I have, but we've lived through a couple of the hype cycles, right? I can name some companies that at points in time were, the multi-billion-dollar companies that kind of came and went. But today's hype and also opportunity is AI, right? And you alluded to that of, hey, if we can automate away certain conversations, of course, the leasing associates, the on-site associates, they're excited about that too. So how do you think about that role of, hey, we are a human-centric services organization, but I also think renters want less, and often they just want things to be resolved more quickly, more timely. Where's the balance? And do you think that certain stakeholders may be leaning too far one way or the other?
It's such a great question. And I think every company and probably every person right now in the world is wrestling with this question. So I'll posit an answer and I will tell you it could be wrong. Right? I think we're in the nascent days of answering this for ourselves and for the industry and just at large as a society. But I'm really bullish on AI. I'm super excited about it. My team is probably tired of me talking about it, but I'm super bullish on it. I think AI is a tool and a partner like any other. I don't think that there will be a management platform that is only AI. Until the robots come and they can fix all the toilets and actually greet you and make eye contact with you in a way that feels amazing, like we humans and technology will coexist and should coexist in homes and rental and in residential. Because that's my perspective, I don't think of AI as replacing people. I think of AI in the same way we thought about technology, which is as enabling, empowering, partnering with, and having a hybrid environment where there are AI native things and human native things. And together, the marriage of these is a different product. It should make the rental experience better. It should make the bottom line for a property better. And by the way, it should make the bottom line of the operator better. So if we view it that way, I think it's a huge opportunity, and I'm very bullish on it.
Yeah, agreed. I love that. I love that balance. And yeah, I think you and I have been at this long enough, the nuance that you bring to that answer. I appreciate that. And yet again, humility, we don't know exactly what the future holds. Looking to the future now, as you think about the scale that you've achieved, and I know it's only been recent, a few months that you've really been operating at this really, what I consider mega scale, but how have those acquisitions and the platform that you now have reshaped your view of the role that Alfred will play in the ecosystem? And I ask that in the context of, once you were a technology vendor and you could only influence through your ability to, like you said, get the operators to use the technology properly, you guys took a big step in with the RKW acquisition, but now you have a big seat at the table as one of the largest management platforms in the country. How does that look like playing it forward a few years?
So I think when I think about the acquisitions themselves, I think that they clarified the opportunity for us in a way that we might not have seen. And I'll spend a little bit of time on that, and then I'll answer your actual question. Yeah. I think one of the benefits of living as a technology company and a property management business is we have a front line into the opportunities for operators and residents. So we can look at a resident experience, or we can look at the way that a team has to function, and we can say, we need to build for that, or we just need to make this better. So the feedback loop for what we can do is really fast, and we build for ourselves, which also means, by the way, we eat our own dog food. If our product stinks, it stinks for us, and we need to fix it. We try to practice what we preach and use the different skills we have available in the company to build the product. From that vantage point, I think we have an opportunity to reimagine the entire stack. And I don't mean technology stack, the operating model of residential real estate. I think about it almost as infrastructure, what we're doing. We get to set a new standard. How do we operate? What technology do we need? What are the services that are available? How do we integrate all of these things? We want to build for performance, but we also want to build for experience. And sitting in the seat with the scale that we are building, recognizing a lot of great companies have come before us, and we're building on the shoulders of the giants that came first. But we can take that moment and say, how should it be going forward? Let's take the best of what has happened and imagine what could be, and bring those two things together and build the next iteration of what, is possible in this industry.
I love that. And I hadn't thought about that, to your point of this infrastructure. And I think that changes the last question I wanted to ask as you think about this future state and where the industry is going. You alluded to it earlier in terms of, you said, look, there's property management 3.0. And is that, in that world, should we think, the listener, should we think about Alfred as a technology company, a technology platform, as a management company? Can I put you in one box, or is it both?
I'm going to answer both, Tyler. We're both. And I think that's the point. I actually think the point is, in the world we're in today, you don't have to choose, and you shouldn't choose. Both are necessary. And the world, the future isn't just operations or digital. It's operations and digital. And I think companies that win in the future understand that, and they blur the lines in a way that works for their business model. And that's the space and the role I think we can play. It's counterintuitive. We have a history of doing things against the grain, and I think it's the right bet to make at this moment in time.
I like that. And I think it shows great leadership, Jess, because to your point, in the early mobile days, you needed to say we're a mobile first platform, mobile only, or we're a tech only company, et cetera. Or right now we're an AI only company. And I think that nuance to say, no, it's both. And it's going to be services and technology going forward plants your flag in a place that I think is a great place to be planted. So thank you for this time, Jess. We like to end these interviews just with a couple of get to know you questions. So first and foremost, we've got this billboard sitting outside my office. So I'm curious, if we gave you the space, Jess Beck, what phrase or mantra would you put up on that billboard?
Can I give you two?
Oh, sure.
All right. I haven't been able to choose between them as I think about this question. One is stay in the arena, period.
Ooh, I like that one.
Okay. The other one is empathy is a superpower.
Unfortunately, I'm going to do both as well to your previous answer. And just to double click on them. One, like I said earlier, I can sense the empathy from you. I've always sensed it in our relationship. And the stay in the arena, this is my crazy idea. There's a lot of museums for like heroes and stuff. As I like to read biographies, one of the things, I love that quote, the man in the arena. And I've always thought there should be a museum for the people who famously were wrong. The people who said Winston Churchill shouldn't be prime minister, or the person who didn't draft Michael Jordan. Because yeah, just staying in the arena is really what matters. So I like that. All right, just in addition to the empathy I sense from you, I can sense, and you mentioned earlier, this deeply embedded passion you have for serving that comes from your childhood. I'm curious, if you were to step away and got to work full time on something more in the philanthropic field, is there a cause that you'd be passionate about working on?
It's such a good question. I think it's probably about reimagining work and service and sort of the dignity of it. I generally believe that there's so much untapped potential in people. And if we design better systems, we can access that. I am biased. I grew up in a world where we did that. But I think that's true for everyone.
Yeah, I love that experience that you've had. And you and I, both as parents, think about the world for our kids. And I often think, I worry sometimes when my kids have it too easy. Like, I don't think, I grew up very fortunate, and I didn't really understand how blessed I was until I lived out of the country. And I came away with that same sentiment of, I lived in an impoverished place in Peru, and it wasn't that they were lazy people. They just didn't have the systems or opportunities that I was given. And so I love that, the dignity of work and giving people that opportunity. And I think that, again, going to our alignment on people are going to continue to be in this industry. If I look forward, we need more apartments in this country. We need more housing in this country. And it's a great industry to serve in. Like, what a wonderful cause to have people working in the space of housing. So clearly here we're biased. Our tagline is renter-centric. We talk about it all the time. But I'm curious for you, and it's come across in some of the answers you've given, but what does that mean to you, the phrase renter-centric?
I think it means if we started by looking at what it meant for the resident and answering that question and then building backwards from there, what would the answer be? So start with the resident and then go backwards.
That's awesome. That's like a great Simon Sinek parallel. In multifamily, it's not start with why, it's start with the resident. Start with the resident and you figure out how later. And you
exactly. That's great.
You've done that. All right. Finish this sentence. The future of multifamily is?
Uncharted and earned.
I like that. You guys you're earning it. All right, I got two more here. What's a value you refuse to compromise on?
Integrity, especially when no one is watching.
Yeah, that's an important one. It's the in-between moments, right, that matter. All right, lastly, Jess, how do people follow along with this Alfred journey? Where can they find out more about you or the business?
We try to share regularly on LinkedIn, so you can follow there. And otherwise, check out our website, send us an email. We are looking for friends, partners, and like-minded people to build with.
Awesome. Will you guys be at OpTech?
We will. Come see us.
Awesome. Okay. I look forward to seeing you then, Jess. Thank you for wearing the tech hat for a minute. I know you got to go put on another one for another meeting, but really appreciate your time.
This was awesome, Tyler. Thank you so much. Thank you for the great conversation and thoughtful questions. And we should do it again.
Let's do it again. Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jess.
See you soon. Bye.